Men don't truly understand themselves, yet they're quick to claim they understand women. Plato never wrote those exact words, but if you read his work with brutal honesty, that truth bleeds through every page. Plato wasn't giving dating advice. He wasn't teaching men how to attract women or win love. What he was doing was far more dangerous. He was diagnosing a deeper disease, the blindness of man to the forces that govern his own mind. Long before men learned how to chase beauty, long before they bowed to soft whispers and fleeting desire, Plato had already identified the real threat. An untrained male mind becomes the perfect playground for illusion. An illusion, when left unchecked, becomes slavery. You probably remember the allegory of the cave from the Republic. Prisoners chained in darkness, unable to move, staring at shadows cast on a wall. They believe those shadows are reality. They argue over them, they worship them. Their entire world is built on images projected by forces they don't control. Most people read this as a political metaphor, or a critique of social manipulation. But Plato was pointing at something far more intimate. Those shadows aren't just laws, governments, or culture. One of the most powerful shadows cast on the mind of man is woman herself. Not woman in her true nature, but woman as an idea, an illusion, a projection shaped by desire, fantasy, and emotional hunger. An image powerful enough to keep men distracted, compliant, and emotionally enslaved. Plato warned that the masses don't resist truth because it's hidden. They resist it because it's painful. When truth appears, people defend their illusions like their lives depend on it. And no illusion is more intoxicating than the belief that women are innocent, pure, and incapable of manipulation. This is the stage where most men lose themselves. A woman smiles, and the untrained man calls it love. She cries, and he calls it sincerity. She touches his hand, and he calls it destiny. Plato would see this and shake his head. To him, this isn't romance. This is a prisoner refusing to turn toward the light, a man choosing shadows and calling them reality. Plato believed true knowledge begins with humility. The beginning of wisdom, he argued, is the definition of terms. But how many men actually define woman based on reason instead of reaction? How many men study feminine influence with the same seriousness they study business, power, or war? Almost none. And that ignorance is exactly why women dominate the emotional world of men without ever lifting a finger. Here's the uncomfortable truth Plato exposes. A woman doesn't need to manipulate you. She doesn't need a plan. She doesn't need malice. She simply exists as a mirror to what you refuse to confront in yourself. She reflects your emotional weakness, your hunger for validation, your fear of being alone. And instead of facing that reflection, you fall in love with it. Plato said the worst form of deception is self-deception. Men convince themselves they are rational in love. They believe they are choosing freely, but in reality, they are prisoners, and the chains aren't on their wrists. They're wrapped tightly around the mind. Here's Plato's brutal clarity. Woman does not control you. Your illusions about her do. The false goddess you've built in your imagination is what keeps you enslaved. She smiles, and you collapse. She pulls away and you chase. You hand her your power and call it devotion. But Plato warned that those who live by shadows will never understand reality when it finally burns their eyes. So you sit there believing your heart is pure, your intentions are noble, your love is sacred. But if you could step outside yourself, if you could become the philosopher Plato demands you be, you'd see something very different. You'd see a man mistaking chains for wings, illusion for truth, emotional dependence for love. Plato never romanticized human nature. In Phaedrus, he describes the soul as a chariot pulled by two horses. One horse is noble, disciplined, drawn toward truth and reason. The other is wild, craving pleasure, beauty, sensation. The driver, the man himself, spends his life trying to control these forces. This is where most men fail. Every time a woman enters the picture, the wild horse snaps the reins. It pulls you toward her laughter, her scent, her body, her attention, and the driver, weak and untrained, lets himself be dragged. You don't question the pull. You don't resist it. You call this chaos falling in love. Plato would call it spiritual slavery. In the Symposium, Plato describes love not as mutual happiness, but as a form of madness sent by the gods. A divine madness? Yes, but madness all the same. It blinds men. It consumes them. It makes them worship beauty while forgetting truth. And unless that madness is mastered, a man becomes nothing more than a servant to fleeting pleasure, a worshipper of shadows. And here's the twist most men don't want to hear. Women understand this. Maybe not consciously, maybe not with cruelty, but instinctively. They know men are ruled by this madness. They know the power they hold over a man who hasn't disciplined his soul. She doesn't need to destroy you. She only needs to exist in your mind as the prize. The moment you make her your purpose, your meaning, your reward, you stop seeing her as she is. You see her as you need her to be. And that is the perfect condition for manipulation. Not because she is evil, but because you are blind. Plato feared one thing more than war: the corruption of the soul. He warned that men who cannot govern themselves will always be governed by others, by tyrants, by sophistes, by flatterers. And who flatters you more effectively than a woman who knows you crave her approval? She becomes the puppeteer. You become the eager puppet. You dance for attention, you sacrifice dignity, you abandon purpose. You tell yourself you're being romantic, loyal, devoted, But the game didn't start when she entered your life. The real game began inside you long before you met her. The war has always been within, between your higher self and your base desires. And every time you choose pleasure over principle, fantasy over reality, you don't lose because she defeated you. You lose because you surrendered. Plato wrote that the just man never allows the lustful part of his soul to rule him. Yet look at how many men negotiate with their emotions like beggars, hoping she will choose them, validate them, complete them. This isn't love. This is a man who escaped one cave only to build another, this time with golden bars and velvet chains. So let me ask you something honestly. When was the last time you questioned why you chase women? Not surface-level excuses. The real reason, are they leading you closer to truth, or deeper into illusion? Most men never ask, because asking requires courage. It means admitting you've been wrong, that you've been fooled, that the stories you tell yourself about love and destiny might be lies. And until you face that, until you turn your head toward the light like Plato demands, you will remain a slave, not to women, but to the idea of women you refuse to question. Plato understood something most men never confront. Society survives on stories, myths, narratives designed to keep people obedient, predictable, and easy to control. And nowhere is this more obvious than in the story. Men are fed about women. You're told she is your better half. You're told she completes you. You're told she holds the keys to your happiness. Plato would call this dangerous nonsense. In the Republic, he makes one thing painfully clear. The masses must be ruled by those who have seen the truth. The tragedy is that most men never become rulers of even their own minds. They outsource their emotional authority to women, then wonder why they feel powerless. Plato described the soul as having three parts: reason, spirit, and appetite. Reason seeks truth and wisdom. Spirit seeks honor, pride, and recognition. Appetite seeks pleasure, comfort, and satisfaction. This framework explains almost everything about modern male weakness. When it comes to women, most men live entirely in the appetite. She smiles, and you feel pleasure. She gives attention, and you feel validated. She touches you and suddenly you feel alive. But this is the lowest part of your being. The part Plato warned must be ruled by reason, or it will destroy you. Appetite, when unchecked, doesn't serve you. It consumes you. And this is why women have such terrifying influence over weak men. She doesn't need to challenge your intellect. She doesn't need to respect your mission. She doesn't need to defeat you in argument. All she needs to do is feed your appetite. And you will sell your soul for another taste. Like a man dying of thirst in the desert, you will crawl on your knees for drops of validation while she stands over you holding water you once had the power to create for yourself. This isn't metaphor. Look around you. Men betray families for a stranger's touch. Men burn down years of discipline for a few moments of attention. Men destroy their future because a woman walked away. Some even end their lives over rejection. What more evidence do you need that most men are ruled by the lowest part of themselves? Plato's warning cuts deeper than comfort. He said no man is free who is not master of himself. Read that again. Freedom has nothing to do with money, status, or options. If your emotions can be hijacked by a glance, a text message, or silence, you are not free. You are a prisoner responding to stimuli like an animal in a cage. Plato didn't stop there. In the Laws, he argued that the downfall of civilizations begins when pleasure replaces discipline. In what is modern society if not a graveyard of men who sacrificed strength, clarity, and self-respect on the altar of feminine approval? You see it in politics, you see it in culture, you see it in everyday life. Men apologizing not to truth, not to principle, but to the fear of losing her. Plato never taught men to hate women. That's a misunderstanding of weak minds. He taught men to see clearly. The woman is not your enemy. She is a reflection of your ungoverned soul. She plays the game because you invited her to the table blind, desperate, and unprepared. But you can flip the board. You can rise from the cave. You can reclaim authority over your mind. But only if you're willing to face what most men are terrified of, the truth about themselves. Plato hinted at something the modern world refuses to accept. Women test men not to destroy them, but to reveal weakness that already exists. She is not the cause of your collapse. She is the mirror exposing who you are, when ego and fantasy are stripped away. In Gorgias, Plato says something devastating. It is better to suffer injustice than to commit it. Why? Because the man who commits injustice proves he has no mastery over himself. And here's the irony no one talks about. When you chase a woman, compromise your values, abandon your mission, and beg for validation, you are committing injustice against your own soul. You think you're fighting for love. You think you're proving devotion, but in reality, you're violating yourself. Plato believed the highest harmony a man can achieve is self-rule, reason governing, desire, truth guiding action, but society programs you to betray this structure. You're told to fight for her no matter the cost, to never give up, to prove your worth by sacrifice. Plato warned about this exact manipulation. In the Republic, he describes how persuasive flatterers rule the masses, not through force, but through pleasure and emotional appeal. And who flatters your delusions better than a woman who feeds your ego while you surrender your discipline? A man addicted to validation is always easy to control. She doesn't need logic. She doesn't need threats. She doesn't need power. She only needs to make you feel chosen, and you'll do the rest. You'll destroy yourself willingly, believing you're chasing love when you're really chasing emotional submission. Plato didn't limit this warning to individuals. He watched Athens fall for the same reason men fall today. Leaders abandon principle to please crowds, just as men abandon their values to please women. Different scale, same disease. The untrained soul always collapses. But Plato also gave the cure. He taught that the highest purpose of man is the pursuit of the good, to climb out of the cave, to face the light even when it burns, even when it destroys the illusions you've built your identity on. And here's the truth most men will never accept. You must see women not as goddesses, not as villains, but as mirrors. Mirrors reflecting your lack of discipline, your fragile ego, your hunger to be seen. Do you have the courage to face that reflection? Not as a victim, not as a hater, but as a man willing to govern himself. Because until you do, you will always be played. Not because women are evil, but because you refuse to master the player inside you. Plato spoke of the philosopher king, the ideal ruler, not because he ruled others, but because he ruled himself. He was unshaken by flattery, immune to temptation, anchored in truth. If you can look into her eyes and see not a prize, not a threat, but a reflection of your own state, you become something rare. You become the just man. And the man who rules himself cannot be manipulated. So stop chasing shadows. Stop worshiping illusions. Stop trading your soul for temporary affection. Stand up, look inward, face the parts of yourself you've avoided, because when you do, the games lose their power. And when the games lose their power, you no longer need to play. Most men fear losing a woman's favor. Plato teaches you to fear something far worse, losing your soul. Plato wrote something most men skim past because it cuts too close to the bone. In Phaedo he says, the soul takes on the character of the actions it pursues. Read that slowly. Your soul becomes what you chase, not what you claim to value, not what you talk about, what you actually pursue. If you spend your life chasing validation, your soul becomes weak. If you make a woman's attention your highest aim, your soul shrinks. If you organize your decisions around her approval, your inner world becomes small, reactive, and fragile. This is not philosophy for classrooms. This is a diagnosis of your daily behavior. Every time you bend your values to keep her, you are not loving her. You are betraying yourself. Every time you silence your truth to avoid conflict, you are not being mature. You are being afraid. Every time you sacrifice your mission so she won't leave, you are not proving devotion. You are declaring that your soul has a price. Plato was clear. Betrayal of the self is the root of injustice. A man who cannot remain loyal to his own principles cannot build anything that lasts. Not a family, not a legacy, not a civilization. Why do tyrants rise? Why do cultures decay? Why do men collapse? Because men refuse to govern themselves. Because pleasure replaces discipline. Because shadows become more comfortable than light. And here's the part that stings the most. Women, consciously or instinctively, test men to expose this weakness. Not because they are cruel, but because they are perceptive. She pushes your boundaries to see if you'll hold the line. She withholds affection to see if you'll beg. She challenges your convictions to see if you'll abandon them just to keep her around. Every time you fold, something irreversible happens. She loses respect. Not because she hates you, but because on a fundamental level, she knows a man who cannot rule himself, cannot rule anything. Not his future, not his household, not his destiny. Plato described the ideal ruler as the philosopher king, a man who has mastered his appetites, disciplined his emotions, and aligned his life with truth rather than impulse. He is calm where others panic, stable where others react, grounded where others beg. This man does not need to manipulate. He does not need to chase. He does not need to perform. His power comes from self-mastery. Imagine looking at a woman and feeling no fear of losing her, no anxiety about her approval, no hunger for validation, not because you hate her, but because you don't need her to complete you, because your soul is already ordered. That is freedom. Plato never told men to reject love. He told them to reject enslavement. He never taught men to avoid women. He taught them to avoid illusion. The woman is not the enemy. The unexamined mind is. Most men live in constant terror of losing a woman's favor. Plato teaches you to fear something far more devastating. The loss of your own soul. Because once you lose that, no amount of affection can save you. Look around the modern world. Men apologizing for their existence. Men afraid to speak truth. Men surrendering ambition to avoid discomfort. Men walking on eggshells. Calling it love? This isn't progress. It's decay. Plato warned that when men stop pursuing the good, they begin serving comfort. And comfort is the fastest way to rot a soul. You see it everywhere. Men trading strength for approval, clarity for affection, discipline for pleasure. And then they wonder why they feel empty. Here's the hard truth no one tells you. A woman cannot respect a man who does not respect himself. And self-respect is not an emotion. It is the result of alignment. Alignment between your values and your actions. If your actions say, I will abandon myself for attention, your soul hears that message, and it remembers. Plato believed the soul is shaped through repetition, not through motivation, not through intention, through habit, through daily choices. Every time you choose comfort over discipline, your soul learns weakness. Every time you choose truth over pleasure, your soul grows stronger. This is why most men never escape the cave. The cave is comfortable, the shadows are familiar. The illusion feels safer than responsibility. Turning toward the light hurts. It burns the eyes. It destroys the stories you've been telling yourself. But that pain is the price of freedom. To see clearly is to accept that you were wrong, that your fantasies misled you, that your hunger controlled you. Most men would rather stay blind than face that reckoning. Plato didn't offer motivation, he offered transformation. He said the highest good is not happiness, but harmony. A soul ordered by reason, a life guided by truth, a man unmoved by flattery or rejection. When you reach that state, something strange happens. Women stop controlling you, not because you dominate them, but because you are no longer dominated by yourself. Their tests lose power, their games dissolve. Their approval becomes optional, and paradoxically, this is when respect appears. Not because you chased it, but because you no longer needed it. This is the secret modern culture will never teach you. A man who is whole does not beg. A man who is disciplined does not chase. A man who rules himself cannot be ruled by others. So here is the real challenge Plato leaves you with. Stop asking how to win women. Start asking how to master your soul. Stop worrying about attraction. Start building alignment. Stop feeding the wild horse. Train the driver. Because when you govern yourself, everything changes. You no longer fear rejection. You no longer collapse under silence. You no longer sacrifice your future for temporary affection. You become dangerous to manipulation. Plato believed the purpose of philosophy was not discussion, but liberation. To free the mind from illusion. To awaken the soul from sleep. To create men who could stand in the light without flinching. That is the invitation before you. You can remain in the cave, worshipping shadows, blaming women, blaming society, blaming fate, or you can turn around, face the light, accept responsibility, and become something rare, a man who governs himself. And when you do, you'll realize the truth Plato tried to pass down across centuries. Women never held your power. You handed it away, and the moment you stop doing that, the game ends. If this message challenged you, shook you, or forced you to look inward, don't ignore that feeling. That discomfort is the beginning of wisdom. Take action, like this video, share it with a man who needs to hear it. Subscribe to this channel. We are building a brotherhood of men who refuse to live in the shadows. Men who choose discipline over delusion, truth over comfort, mastery over weakness. The world does not need more men chasing illusions. It needs men who rule themselves.